The views expressed by any of the speakers are theirs and doesn't necessarily represent what the club expresses. Just had to give that disclaimer. The next speaker is Carolyn Smith. She's running as a candidate for the national GOP.
Thank you, Ray. How many of you were elected to be a state delegate at the convention? Oh, wow, congratulations. Just to remind you, it is May the 14th and 15th. Get your registration now. Before May 1st, you'll only have to pay $85. If you wait till after May 1st, it'll be $100. A walk-in will be $125. So the most important thing that you want to do, because you're going to ask everyone questions, you're going to get different answers, please, please go on the website. Everything you want to know is there. And it's Nevada spelled out, NEVADAGOP.org. So the first thing you need to do is get registered, pull your agenda, get familiar with it, know what you're going there for. Learn about, there's a lot of free classes. There's some parliamentarian classes that you're going to want to know. If you're at a meeting, you want to know proper procedure. So please do that. If you want to be a national delegate, please sign up for it. You're going to get all the information you need right there on the site. And then again, of course, I am here asking for your vote. I went in 2012. I feel I have some experience behind me, and I would like for you to vote for me to go to Cleveland. Thank you. And by the way, I have helped all of you guys, so now it's time to help me. Thank you.
And she'll bug me to death if we don't let her announcements, right, Marion? Bill? All right, we are recording and we are going live. The next speaker is one of the candidates for the Nevada Senate to take Harry Reid's place, Sharon Engel.
This is good. Thank you, Ray. Thank you all for being here. I am Sharon Engel. I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and I want you to vote for me. If you don't hear anything else that I say, that's why I came. I moved here when I was 3 years old with my family. We had a small business in South Reno, actually where this place is standing right now. Just across the street, my father and mother owned a motel, and we worked there while I was growing up. I graduated from Worcester High School and also from the University of Nevada, Reno. I majored in art, but 46 years ago, I met the love of my life and realized I wasn't going to be going off to Paris and London or even San Francisco. I was going to be going to Ely and Winnemucca and Tonopah. And so I quickly changed my major to education. And off we went. We have 2 children, a daughter and a son. And when my son was in kindergarten, he failed. So being an educator, I said, well, I can do this. I'll just homeschool this boy. That's when the government got involved in my life. A judge told me, I know it's the law that you can homeschool your children, but the law should say that you can't homeschool your children unless you live more than 50 miles away from the nearest school. I spent the rest of my life up until 2006 working for freedom for homeschoolers. And one of the things that I'm most proud of doing as a state legislator is getting one of the most freeing laws for homeschoolers in the nation. And what this law says is you can homeschool your kids in Nevada. How about that? So we moved to Tonopah, and there I served on a school board for a term, and then we moved into Reno again. And my son, the one who failed kindergarten, came to me and he said, Mom, I'd like to move home, but only under 2 conditions. And I said, oh, honey, what would those 2 conditions be? And he said, well, Mom, the first one is you've got to get a life, and the second one is you can't be me. And so I ran for the state legislature, and I remember coming home one night about 10:30 at night, and he met me at the door, and he said, Mom, are you ever going to cook dinner again? And I said, oh, honey, I got a life and it isn't you. And I want to say that to all of you because our founders signed a document to which they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. We're in that kind of desperate situation right now in our country where our country needs us and we still have a life to give for our country. And I'm so glad that you're here today because that says to me that you've heard that call and you're ready to give something for your country. You're not quite sure what it might be, but I've got some ideas for you. And I'll explain that in a minute. One of the things that I did that I was most proud of in the Nevada State Legislature was that Don Gustafson and I led the fearless Fightin' 15 to defeat the gross receipts tax in 2003. And we took that fight all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court to keep our constitutional 2/3 in place. I never quit thinking about how we the people did that. We the people passed a law that said you can't pass a tax or fee increase by less than 2/3. And it's we the people now that can do something more about some of the things that are weighing down the citizens of Nevada. And I've got 3 petitions back there that I'd like you to sign. One of them is for healthcare freedom. And what that says is that we don't want the government involved in making our choices. We'd like to have the freedom to make our own healthcare choices. And if you sign this and if it is passed, it will actually repeal the failed Obamacare exchange here in the state. The second one is for the privacy of our children. We know that the schools are collecting a lot of data through this testing. And we also know that we're not protected anymore at the federal level. Their privacy is not protected because of things that have happened with that law. But we, the people, have an opportunity now to get this on the ballot. And what it says is that all of that data that you collect can only go as far as a local school district unless you get parental consent. So we're requiring parental consent before they can do anything with the information that would jeopardize the privacy of our kids. And finally, I have a petition to secure our vote. We all know that across the nation, we've had questions about what goes on in elections. And this is not the silver bullet, but it sure helps. And what it does is it requires identification when you go to the polls to vote. Along those lines, one of the questions that I'm constantly asked when I speak is, did Harry Reid steal the election in 2010? Well, I have a free book for you in the back if you want to get a signed copy, and on page 122, I answer that question. Finally, I have written another book. You'll want to get this one, but it's a limited edition. It's only available on my website. And this is the one I'm making money with. It's the new book. And what it does is it explains what happened in 2010 going forward. And it also explains what we can do as we the people to solve some of these problems. Reagan said it best. He said, the government is not the solution to the problem. They are the problem. The solution to the problem is us. And that's why I'm here to ask you to sign these petitions, because this is us getting engaged in our government. I'm here to ask you to volunteer for my campaign, volunteer for any of these campaigns in this room. That's how you can help put your life on the line for your country. And finally, I'm asking you to donate to my campaign, and you get this book with that donation. I, again, am Sharon Engel. I'm running for the U.S. Senate. I'll be back there collecting signatures. Thank you so much for letting me speak to you today. I want your vote.
Thank you, Sharon. The next speaker is Kent Minster. He is the Northern Nevada director, among other things, for Congressman Joe Heck, and he's also running to get rid of Harry Reid.
Hi, everybody. Very nice to meet many. Please. Guys, you don't have to clap. I'm just kidding. Guys, my name is Ken Minster. I'm the outreach director for Congressman Heck's campaign, and it's been a very contentious year, right? Between the presidential, there's congressional races that have primaries, some assembly district primaries. But can we all agree on one thing, that 30 years of Harry Reid is about 30 years too many? Can we at least agree on that point? I'm with you. It is critical. This Senate race is critical. And the reason why is because one of the main political blogs or political journalistic organizations, if you can call that anymore, there are 5 races in the United States that are going to flip parties. 4 of them are Republican seats that plan to go Democrat, and 1 seat that a Democrat holds that is going Republican. That's this one. It is critically important that we win this race. I work for Dr. Joe Heck. I've worked for him for about four or 5 years now. And here's the thing. Dr. Heck was elected to the Congress in 2010. Before that, he took his first oath of office was not when he signed into Congress. It was when he joined the military. He's been a brigadier general. He's a brigadier general in the Army Reserve right now. He did emergency medicine down at UMC in Las Vegas. And he's done an incredible job in Congress. He's kept his promise. He's the same guy that I sent to Congress in 2010. You know, some of these guys get to Washington, D.C., and, you know, a couple years they start to change and start. Joe Heck has not. And that's why I want you to support him this year. I've got a pamphlet right here that's got some more information about him. On the back, you can see actual bills that he's actually gotten past the House of Representatives and actually gotten signed into law. He's done an effective job. He is somebody that we need to go to the Senate now. What I need your help by adopting your neighborhoods. There are so many people up in Northern Nevada that don't know him as a congressman and don't know how good he is, and I need your help to tell them. If you have questions on where Dr. Heck stands on specific issues, like the omnibus bill that recently was passed in November, Congressman Heck voted against that because it increased spending. The Gang of Eight bill, Congressman Heck opposed bringing up it in the House of Representatives and would have voted no because it doesn't secure the border. Things like that, he voted to audit the Fed. Things like that, if you have specific questions, I want you to come ask me. Dr. Heck is the guy that can win this seat, and he will win. And I appreciate your time. Once again, my name is Ken. Come and see me in the back. I've got stickers, window stickers for your BMWs and your Bentleys, things like that, and yard signs as well. Come and sign up and give me your information. Our office grand opening is May 22nd. So that's a Sunday. It'll be a barbecue. And come before church, after church, whatever you want to do. And I'm gonna give you guys all that information. Our office is gonna be right next to the Washoe County office, but I'll email you and get you all that information in the coming days. So guys, I appreciate your support. I appreciate you supporting Dr. Heck, and let's win this thing in November. Thank you. I'll keep going, Ray, if you want me to keep going. So Dr. Heck, does Ray want it? So Dr. Heck was born in New York in 1990. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Nope.
Boy, you notice he wasn't long-winded at all. Guess it's in time before we introduce our main speakers. And I think I want to have people stand up and introduce themselves because some of the people are a little new here to me. I'll start table by table. Gary Martin is our program chairman and vice president. Stand up, Gary. John Holman is our treasurer and takes membership. So we appreciate if you'd like to sign up, see John in the red shirt. It's only $35 for a voting member, $20 for a non-voting member. Jill Toes, if she would stand up, is running for $25 to replace Mr. Hickey. Oh, an upgrade. Okay, Pat says an upgrade. Randy Kerner is our current assemblyman in 26, be retiring from that position. Samantha Brocklesby is running Senate 13. I think she has supporters here. Cher Daniels is president of the Sparks Women. Senator Don Gustafson. Kent Bailey is running also for Senate 13. What's your last name? Kent. Oh, I didn't see her. Bonnie Weber is running for 27 to get rid of Benitez. What's her? Teresa Benitez Thompson, 27. She used to be a county commissioner. Liz Arnold is with the Nevada GOP, assigned here locally. Cece is, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Cece Stanton, and I'm with the Nevada Medical Marijuana Association.
This guy will throw you in jail if he gets elected. No.
My name is Matt Lee. I'm running for Sparks Justice Court.
Next individual is Andre Gonzalez. He's on our board, and he's the owner of La Voice magazine. La Voice. You're taking... No. No, I know. You're out. Tom Heck is running for Nevada Senate against Harry Reid.
Yes, I'm Tom Heck, and I spent 22 years in the military, and I watched this country go downhill over the last several years, and I'm fed up with it. You have Republican senators and assembly people that voted the largest tax increase in the Nevada history. I'm tired of it. I wanted to run. If you guys are looking for the same thing over and over again, that's called insanity, then vote for career politicians. If you're looking for something new, then vote for me. I'm not a career politician, never done it before, but I'm going to do you well, and I'm going to speak up for you and make these guys do the right thing. Business solutions and market solutions.
Thank you, Tom. Next individual is Mr. Rigger Sr. He's running, he's really brave in 24 Assembly.
Yeah, I just got fed up with the politics in Nevada in Congress and Senate, and the Nevada legislation are not doing their job. And I'm in a very heavy district that's supposed to be Democrat totally, but that's the way it goes, and you never know what happens. So, but anyway, you know, I want to change the politics in Nevada because we're going downhill. We're 50th in the whole United States in education, which is very poor. And your legislation are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and we need to think of the Nevada people instead of politics. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I miss John Staub. He's the Northern Nevada and most of the state director for Nevada GOP. And did I miss anyone? Oh, Carolyn Smith also helps out. Oh, I miss Juanita. Juanita Cox is in charge. Go ahead.
I'm president of Nevada Republican Assembly, and we're soon to have our endorsing convention. Washoe County is having their Republican Assembly is having their endorsing convention on, I believe it's the 5th, and we're having ours that weekend. Please attend, or candidates, please get a hold of us.
Thank you, Juanita. Is there anybody else I missed? Not hearing anyone. You're all important. Before I get into announcements, I'll let Marion Bond do a little plug about the Republican women with the Mad Hatter thing.
Yeah, just for a minute. Wow, how about that? Okay. Yeah, with Republican Women of Reno, our club is having a little spring break from conventional politics. We're having a Mad Hatter's Tea Party this coming Saturday here at the Atlantis Casino. And it's Mad Hatter's Tea Party and just a fun afternoon. And we'd just love to have you come. There's a brochure on all the tables and also in our newsletter. I think there are newsletters on your table somewhere. It's I believe it's $25 if you make your reservation right away, and otherwise it's $30. But we're going to have just a real fun party, fancy hats, some contests. We have some nice gifts and vendors, and it's just and Heidi Smith is coming too. That's another big draw. Heidi is coming. We have a resolution for Heidi, making her an honorary member of our club. She's been a member for 30 years of Republican Women of Reno. Our club has been in. Ray's tapping my shoulder, but I'm not going to give you the microphone. Anyway, we have two ladies here from our club. If you wanted more information, you girls stand up over there. Come and see us before you leave today, and come and join us for a fun afternoon. Thank you.
My apologies, but I forgot to announce somebody very important. Don Kaplan is with the Jewish Coalition of Northern Nevada. Don, stand up. And his lovely wife, Sandra. All right, we're almost on schedule. Just a little club business. Our next meeting for the men's club, Republican Men's Club, is May 17th. It's a luncheon. Should be a good subject. The topic is first-generation children of immigrants speaking on immigration. Should be a very controversial, good subject. And I'll announce one of the speakers is Sam Kumar, that was a past chairman of the Washoe GOP. The other thing is tomorrow, the Washoe Republican women in this room is having their luncheon, and there are several of the candidates for 13 and 15 for the Senate that will be speaking. Sherry, do you want to say something on Cinco de Mayo real briefly?
Tell everybody that the flyers are on that back desk also.
Hello, everybody. We are having Cinco de Mayo again this year for the GOP. So I'll put on that hat. All of the candidates in the room, once again, you are free to use our table, no charge. All we ask is that you come and wave and say hello for possibly an hour and maybe get some voter registration, which also gets you props out there. We are also pleasure to have the National is going to come up with their guys. I have also taken over the political portion of La Voz this year, which is the Hispanic newspaper. So I hope all you candidates who are primaried get your advertisements out there, because believe it or not, there are a lot of Hispanic Republicans. Thanks.
Thank you, Sherry. By the way, that's at the Grand Sierra. The first day starts on April 29th. She forgot to mention it. April 29th, it's in the evening. It's $5 to get in. Saturday, it runs 11 o'clock until 6 or 7. And then Sunday until 5 o'clock, 11 until 5. And we need help. I reactivated like a dummy this thing, and I'm not Hispanic. This will be the third year we're in it. It really is good. They get over 20 to 25,000 people or more during those 3 days. So it is important as a candidate. She was being polite when she said, be there for an hour or so. Heck no, I get a candidate there, we're going to make you work the booth. So you need to work. I'm a slave driver. Now, without further ado, and we're right on schedule, Bill, Bill Conrad that puts all this on, and are you about ready to go live? Didn't hear you, Bill.
Hey folks, this is Bill Conrad. I wanted to get 5 minutes to refresh and start anew, but we'll just continue on the same live feed, and I will introduce it and I will splice it. But it's working fine, and a lot of fun stuff going on. Hey, hopefully we'll have a free training system that any politician or local city council can learn to stream and do this themselves for their campaigns. Hopefully they'll be Republicans. So that's the purpose here. So let me get up. Since we have PowerPoints, it's a little more complex. I've got to go back up into here and do a screenshot here. It's not. So anyway, let me start right now. So our first speaker will be Pat.
No.
Joe. Okay. Let me take me a couple seconds just to set up the PowerPoints. So I got the wrong PowerPoint set up.
We'll forgive you.
Is this the right one? I think this is it.
Is that yours?
Okay.
By the way, after each speaker will speak for about 15 minutes approximately, then you'll be able to ask questions for pro and con. You about ready, Bill?
No. It just takes me a second to reset up.
Oh, yeah.
So go ahead. You can start.
You're going to announce Joe, or?
Yeah, I'll announce. Well, okay, I'll announce Joe. Let's start. All right, Joe, thanks for the patience. Welcome to Men's Club live.
Hello.
Welcome to Men's Club live, April 19th. Today we have a forum where we're going to talk the pro and con about legalization of recreational marijuana in the state of Nevada, which is coming up to be voted on this year. Representing the proponents of the Regulate and Tax Marijuana Act is Joe Brezny. Bo is from Las Vegas, and he is a lifelong Republican, been working in this forum for a while, and we'll go directly into his discussion. Also, if you want to go to republicanmensclub.org, you can hear about a 15-minute one-on-one with Joe where he explains some of his points on the legalization of recreational marijuana. Joe, welcome to the Republican Men's Club.
Hi, thanks. Very nice of you. I wasn't sure if I would get any of that. I talked to a lot of different groups. I talked to Lions clubs, Rotary clubs, young Democrats, young Republicans. We're willing to talk with anyone. I did grow up in the Republican Party. I worked there for quite a while. My prior positions in Nevada, I was executive director of the Nevada Republican Party. For the better part of 10 years, I was executive director of the Nevada Republican Senate Caucus for Senator Raggio and helped him keep majorities. And then in 2008, I was Governor Romney's state director here. And our margin of victory in 2008 is still the largest margin of victory of any caucus, Republican or Democrat. So I grew up on the operative side of things. And then this is a volunteer job for me. This is just something where I was sick of almost getting arrested, or for simply having a choice of something I preferred to alcohol that's objectively less harmful, objectively less habit forming, and less likely to be associated with violent behavior. And so when polling came around, I decided to volunteer and do something, which is what brought me to this. So now I'm the spokesman for the Yes on 2 campaign. We were originally IP1, now we're question 2. So I'll go ahead and lead into the first slide. Do you click or do I click? You click. Okay, so I think maybe another click to get the words up. Another one. There we go. Okay. So what the initiative does, there we go. It regulates marijuana production and sales. It taxes it. There's a 15% excise tax at the wholesale level, and that's marked to go into the distributive school account. So that's the generates revenue for K-12 education, creates jobs in a regulated market versus the jobs that are currently in a black market. reduces teen access to marijuana. I've actually got a whole slide on this that I'll go into, but the 40,000 foot view, at least from my experience when I was in high school, I didn't know a single kid that was selling bootleg moonshine, but I could tell you the 3 guys that were selling weed, because in an unregulated market, in a black market, the cartels push marijuana everywhere. The cartels don't care. They don't check ID. They don't follow regulations. They don't pay taxes. They just sell marijuana to whoever they can get to buy it. And so they target our schools. So we think this is a better way. It increases consumer safety. And with our medical marijuana regulations right now in Nevada, we have the toughest testing standards in the country. We have the most expensive tests in the country. They're testing for mold, adulterants, fertilizer, bugs. They test for everything. And none of those protections are in place on the black market. And lastly, it ends marijuana prohibition. And marijuana prohibition has been a very, very expensive failure. We spend $40 billion a year nationally, and it's a war that we don't win. It's a war that we just keep chasing our tail and fighting. So in essence, we've been fighting this 40-year-long war for marijuana prohibition, and there's been no winners, just losers, casualties, and costs. So it's time for a new approach. On the next slide, we'll talk about what the marijuana initiative does not do. We hear the other side screaming, you're gonna have people smoking marijuana on every corner. It does not allow for public use. This is still in the privacy of your own home. It does not change the existing laws regarding DUIs. We currently have DUI laws in the state that are so tough that the Clark County prosecutor is saying that it's difficult to prosecute based on that alone, because the nanogram limit is so far below what the federal limit is for people who drive trains, that it's difficult to enforce. So even he is saying that we need to work on something that changes that to make it more enforceable, such as mandating a field sobriety test if there's a suspicion of marijuana usage. So it's something where you're not going to see, you'll be hearing that you will see this, but you're not going to see an increase in people driving under the influence on the roads, because there's an argument that if we regulate this, all of a sudden, the catchphrases that you're going to hear suspiciously after I'm done talking are that when you regulate something, usage goes up because you increase the availability. And neither of those things are true, because marijuana is very available. It's available now. It's just sold on the black market, and it's sold by cartels. So this does not allow any unlicensed people to sell marijuana. Approximately 70% of the black market has been eliminated in Denver, and we're continuing to eliminate it more and more every week. This does not affect employers' current marijuana policies or restrictions. We actually put employer protections into the act. So this is not something where someone's going to be able to come to work and say, hey, it doesn't matter that I can't pass a drug test. I still get to work at the Tesla factory. Not true. Your employer can fire you for consuming alcohol. They can fire you for consuming marijuana. And this does not touch the existing medical marijuana law at all. So a patient today is a patient after this, and we don't increase their rights, decrease their rights, change their amounts. It just simply doesn't touch the medical law at all. If we go to the next slide. Economic impact. So the revenue generated from the taxes for this will be earmarked for the distributive school account. And so we want this to go to education, but one thing that will be said as a criticism that is actually true is we can't guarantee that this will increase education funding, because once you put it in the DSA, the legislators could decide to put less other money in the DSA. But making the argument that this doesn't help by increasing the tax revenues overall and doing it through a means that is simply not being taxed right now. This is not going to increase anyone's tax burden right now, because right now it's the cartels selling marijuana. So that's why Grover Norquist came out and said that this was acceptable, that regulating marijuana was something that was okay, because this is not increasing a tax. This is changing something that's in the black market and taxing it under the regulated market. So talking about some of the numbers, they projected $600 million in annual marijuana sales. Colorado has reported more than $1 billion in sales already, and over $135 million in tax revenue from legitimate tax-paying businesses instead of the black market. And so I've got one thing that's been thrown out also is that the tax revenues aren't covering the cost of enforcement. And I've tried to find a nice way to say that's a bunch of hooey, but I can't come up with it. So I brought a paper that actually details how much money was brought in Colorado, what the cost of enforcement was. The cost of enforcement is nowhere near the cost that we have produced in tax revenue. But then we threw in things like increased training of police and driving under the influence of drugs training and youth mediation programs and youth education programs that they're doing in Colorado. Even with all of that thrown in, we still cover the cost. So the tax revenue absolutely covers the cost. And we aren't here saying we should do this because it's a cash cow. We're here saying that we should do this because marijuana prohibition's failed. It's been an expensive failure and it puts our kids at risk. This is a better way. Washington's collected $83 million in marijuana tax. And then tourism, which is key to our economy, it's been on the rise in both Washington and Colorado. So the argument that this could negatively affect tourism just falls on deaf ears because, if anything, this is going to increase tourism. And we move to the next slide on workforce development. So this creates thousands of new tax-paying jobs with competitive pay and benefits. And for the people that are screaming for $15 an hour, this is the industry they want because there's not a job in marijuana that pays less than $15 an hour. In Colorado alone, there's approximately 27,000 people working in this industry, 27,000 new jobs. And those are jobs that simply weren't there before. Washington's proven that big businesses will stay and expand where marijuana is legal. So the idea that Tesla or anyone's going to just pull up and leave town, it doesn't make sense because Amazon is expanding in Seattle, and then Google's on here somewhere. We must get to that later. And so they're building their third Seattle high-rise for thousands of new employees. And then if you look at Colorado, it's got one of the fastest growing economies in the country. Young workers are moving there. And one thing they didn't put on there is if you look at real estate prices in Denver, they're skyrocketing. So the sky isn't falling. You're going to hear that the sky is falling as soon as I stop talking, but the sky is not falling. It's funny because when I talk to groups like the Young Democrats, I get to go last because then I get to go, yeah, everything he said's a lie. Unfortunately, they insist that Pat's got to get to a class. There's no reason I should be going first, but I'm going first so he can just stand up and say, yep, none of that's true. So in 2015, Google broke ground on a 330,000 square foot development, adding another 1,500 jobs. So the big businesses are not running screaming from the hills, and the sky is not falling. Moving on to the next slide on safety. So if you look at 2015 data from NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, found that drivers under the influence of marijuana were no more likely to cause crashes than sober drivers. So comparing this directly to alcohol, it's not an accurate comparison. But if you look at fatalities, if you look at what really matters, and so are we regulating something that, and again, I'm going to phrase this a certain way, but are we regulating something that's widely available on the black market now, that's had us chasing our tails for 40 years to try and get rid of, but all of a sudden by regulating it, a bunch of people are going to decide marijuana is for me and I'm going to smoke a joint, get behind the wheel of a car? Doubtful, and the numbers don't support it. Because if you look at what actually caused traffic fatalities from their own numbers, they mentioned failure to wear seatbelt, reckless motorcycle riding, distracted driving, the texting while driving. Marijuana is not mentioned at all. Alcohol is mentioned. Texting's mentioned. Marijuana is not mentioned as the cause of traffic fatalities at all. So not seen as a statistical cause and also not seeing any statistical increase. One thing that we can say for sure is that the next point is that legalization will decimate the black market. We've got 70% of marijuana sales are now taking place in legal businesses. So think about that from a really high level point of view. Who do we have that's selling marijuana? Well, in Nevada, 100% of it is the black market, 100%. You've got medical marijuana, but if you're someone who doesn't have a qualifying medical condition, we're not California, so they're not as easy to get here. So if you're not someone who has a qualifying medical condition, then 100% of that market is black market, no regulation, not checking IDs, not keeping it away from kids, not saying where and when you should sell it. And talking about where and when you should sell it, one of the funniest criticisms that we hear is they say, well, you know, you're a bunch of rich white guys that are going into poor black neighborhoods and you're setting up these shops there to sell marijuana to minorities. And it's funny because that talking point that the other side's using more than any other is actually a very strong motivator for our minority base because they know the truth about that. And the truth about that's twofold. The first is young black men are 4.5 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than young white men. When young white men get caught with a joint, they made a big mistake that could ruin their career. And when young black men get caught with a joint, they're a criminal. So the statistics don't lie on that. They use it at the same rates we do. They get arrested 4.5 times higher. So to argue that marijuana prohibition is bad for minorities it would be laughable if it wasn't so infuriating to minorities. The other point is that they talk about where we locate these businesses. Well, I'd love to put a marijuana dispensary in Galena. I'd love to. We tried twice. They won't let us put them there. The only place they'll let us put them are in bad neighborhoods. And so saying, well, they're just putting these in bad neighborhoods, hey, we'll put them on Rodeo Drive if you'll let us, and you'll be proud to have them because they're the most secure businesses on the block with every inch of them covered by cameras 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So from a position of safety, it's unquestionably better to regulate this because this is a substance that's remarkably low risk, remarkably less harmful than alcohol. A lot of folks have heard that 47,000 people died of opiate overdoses last year, of prescription drug overdoses. But a lot of people don't know that exactly 0 people died of marijuana overdoses last year. And the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that. Because if you sit down with a big pile of marijuana and a big glass of water, and they keep refilling the water, and you eat the marijuana, you'll die from water toxicity before you'll die from the marijuana because it's so remarkably not harmful to your body. It won't be pleasant if you eat that much, but you won't die. So I would argue that we have this expensive failure and that we're chasing the wrong things. If we actually want to reduce harm in America, we need to go after prescription drug abuse. We need to go after opiate abuse, and we need to stop chasing our tail on something that's killing absolutely no one. So then moving on, according to the Crime in Washington report, marijuana law violations have decreased in Colorado 63%. So those are possession, obviously, because it's now legal. But as you move out of the black market and into a regulated market, you don't have drug dealers selling marijuana in schools or selling marijuana to kids. So that crime's reducing as well. And then also when I see crime being reduced, and crime being reduced in a way that it is moving traffic to something that we are regulating tightly, my Republican upbringing has me see budgets and has me see dollar signs. And when I see that before legalization, one arrest in Colorado costs between $1,000 and $2,000. $1,000 and $2,000 to arrest someone for something that is this low harm and this low risk. So moving on to the next slide, this is the one on child safety. Now, I've got 2 kids. I've got 2 daughters, 11 and 14. I have 14 just turned 14. She's crazy, man. She's a good kid, but boy, that's an age. But she it's funny because you would wonder, does this make me a bad parent that I stand up here and that I advocate that this is a better way? And the funny thing is, child safety is the reason that I'm doing this. Child safety is the reason that I believe in this most strongly. And it's that analogy from before where I knew 3 guys selling marijuana in high school, but I didn't know a single one that was selling hooch. I didn't know a single one selling moonshine. And the thing that always happened, if you got caught with marijuana in high school, you got arrested and you got given a choice. You're either an addict or a criminal. Choose. If you got caught with booze, the first thing they ask you is, where'd you get it? Who's the adult who bought it? They'd try and trace it back to that point of sale where someone's breaking the rules. Marijuana prohibition hasn't worked because alcohol prohibition didn't work. And it's funny because the way that alcohol prohibition fell is actually remarkably similar to how this is falling. You had a federal prohibition, and then a handful of states just said, we're not doing this way anymore. We're not going to put up with this failed system. And they overturned it, and then the federal government caught up. Because as is with marijuana, the people are ahead of the government on this. So we can reduce teen access to marijuana by shifting sales to places that check ID. And if you look at the Department of Public Health in Colorado, their numbers, there's been no statistical increase in teen usage since legalization. Now, you can hear 2 stories. I have a headline in my folder here that says that marijuana use among teens dropped sharply after legalization, because it did, from 2012 to 13 or 13 to 14. The year after that, it normalized and went back up. So Pat's got a statistic saying that it's gone through the roof. If you look at long-term statistics, long-term data, and I made a bunch of copies of a Time article and a Forbes article that go into this in depth. The only place that we can do this is to look at Europe. We have to look at the places that they've treated this like a healthcare issue instead of a criminal issue for more than 10 years. And 10 years on, kids in those countries, in Portugal and Holland, they consume marijuana at a rate 40% lower than American kids. And the key is they consume marijuana at a rate no higher than the other countries around them where it's treated like a criminal issue. So there's no spike where we treat this like a healthcare issue. The kids don't all of a sudden get more access, and the argument can be made that they actually have less access. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to finish up here. I have a couple more points to hit. Edibles, that's where we had problems in Colorado because it was the first time that we had done this. So when the edibles doses were too high, you had people going to the emergency rooms. So the industry came out and said, we voluntarily embrace dosage limits on edibles, required childproof packaging on edibles, and making them more like Hershey's Kisses. So you don't have a big chocolate bar with 10 doses, you have 1 dose. The cartels would never do that. The cartels would never step forward and self-regulate. If we go to the last slide on initiative benefits, this just kind of wraps everything up. This frees up law enforcement to focus on more serious crimes. We drive out the cartels, make some money for our schools, create jobs, generate tax revenue, and then we can guarantee that we know where and when this is being sold, the taxes are being administered appropriately, and that we have safe products going to our consumers. Marijuana prohibition's been an expensive failure, and our argument is that it's time for a new approach. And that's it. And I think we're going to have Pat go and then have questions after both of us speak. Thanks.
I'll introduce Pat. I'll introduce Pat here in a second. There's a couple people I forgot to introduce. Sandy Masters was the founder of Mount Rose Republican Women. She would stand. Elliot Mallon is the Northern Nevada director for AFP, Americans for Prosperity. And Ryan, if you would stand, he's also with Americans. I knew I'd miss somebody. Next individual is Pat Hickey. Currently, he's been appointed, among other things, to District 2 for the Education Board, and he'll be running again here in November. And he's also teaching, I guess, political science at the university, among other things. And without further ado, on the other side of the issue, Pat Hickey.
Thank you, and thank you to the club for a great turnout today. Frankly, before I get into the slideshow, I was a little surprised to hear Joe's long history in Nevada. It sounds like he would have been better suited coming from California, which is the place that does its budgets and makes its laws by ballot initiatives and goes around legislatures. This particular bill would have never passed in the Nevada legislature, but don't worry, that was the Democrat strategy anyway, as publicly stated by Tick Segerblum, and that is this will help drive voters to Hillary Clinton in the November election. So just a little sideline on that. If we want to pass laws by ballot initiatives, referendums that, oh, by the way, if there are any problems with this, we can't change it for 3 years. And one of the unintended consequences, and I'd love to have Joe answer this question when he comes back up, is that should this ballot measure pass in November of this year, possession of marijuana will automatically become legal. It will no longer be a crime in Nevada. And so whether or not it takes a year or two, depending upon what are likely to be a number of court challenges and challenges to the Department of Education, or rather the Department of Taxation. If you were worried they were going to have a hard time putting together the implementation of a new tax in the state, wait till they have to do all the things that this referendum comes from. Anyway, let's go, and we'll go quickly through this so we can get to Q&A and a real discussion. Go next, please, Bill. I'm representing Smart Approaches to Marijuana, which is an organization nationally that has been opposing these initiatives throughout the country. Those are the things that are done locally in Nevada. We have a C4 organization called Nevadans for Responsible Drug Policy. Next, Bill. Marijuana. equals commercialization equals big marijuana. You know, one of the questions I think you should ask Mr. Brezny and his supporters, where is the money coming to support this initiative, the $800,000 from mostly corporations involved in the investment into the industry from outside of Nevada, because there's big money to be made. If there's any parallel to big tobacco, and you should know there are some, you know, there were two lies that big tobacco made. Number one was we were not marketing to children when they did the Joe Camel campaign. The other one was tobacco is not addicted. Both of those have been debunked. And one of the problems, and Joe referenced it, with the marijuana of today, it's no longer smoked. It's in the form of edibles, gummy bears, ice cream, pot tarts, and other things, which, oh, by the way, may be leading young people, as Joe Camel was intended to do, to become heavy users so they've got a client for a lifetime. Next slide, please. And in fact, just like with the alcohol industry, the industry itself requires people to consume more. The alcohol industry doesn't make money for the guy that buys an occasional beer once a week. It's the heavy consumer. And the same will be true with marijuana over time. Next slide. Next. One of the real concerns that physicians, researchers, and others have is the influence of marijuana, especially on the teenage brain. The studies are unrefutable in this respect. And history tells us that regular marijuana users, and we all grew up with them, Joe mentioned his friends, 1 out of every 6 teenager who uses regularly is in all likelihood going to be addicted. There was just a study done by UC Davis and published in the LA Times called "Long-Time Marijuana Use May Make You a Loser." And the study went into various aspects, saying that it showed there's downward social mobility and more financial problems for regular users, and regular long-term users tend to be more antisocial. Another thing about today's marijuana, folks, it's not Woodstock Charlie's. It's not the same stuff you may have experimented back in the late 60s and 70s in college. In the 1970s, the average THC, which is the active ingredient to give you the experience of being high, was about 1.37. The newest strains of medical, even, one was just named after our good friend Tick Segerbloom, called the Segerbloom Haze, has 27% THC. So it's 20 times as great as the marijuana that you may have played with back in your younger days. And this is a problem for people, even like Maureen O'Dowd, who had problems reading the labels. You talk about safe labels and things like that. When she came to Denver on the advent of the passage of the bill and decided, well, it's legal, I might as well participate, she bought a candy bar, didn't read it carefully, and ended up, by her own admission in a New York Times column, saying, I was in the fetal position for almost 14 hours after reading those things. So if you worry that someone, and granted she was a liberal columnist from the New York Times, can't read the markings properly, how is it going to be for youngsters who open the refrigerator and find ice cream in there? Yes, it has a warning label on there, or find gummy bears or Pop-Tarts laying around that mom and dad, who had a good time the night before under the atmosphere of legalization, just happened to bump into. These are examples of the product. So like my example, saying Joe Camel was being marketed and targeted towards a youthful clientele that would be customers for life, I think this makes the case. Next slide. Marijuana has also been associated with lower IQ among adolescents. and lower college entrance scores. And I will just say this, and you heard I'm on the State Board of Education. I don't have to tell folks in this room how many challenges we currently have in Nevada in trying to raise the academic bar, have our kids not only graduate, but be prepared for the science, technology, engineering jobs of the future. This is not going to be helpful. And it's not just high school kids. The Maryland School of Public Health did a study recently of college freshmen for over 10 years. So these are not just 12 and 13-year-olds. They found this: marijuana use linked to college students skipping more classes, spending less time studying, earning lower grades, dropping out more frequently, and being more likely to be unemployed after college. Okay, next slide. We're already having enough challenges in our education system. Ronald Reagan identified that in 1976 when he authored the then famous A Nation at Risk. Well, we're even more at risk now given the levels that we're at. And I would just argue, folks, this is not going to help. Joe might say it's not going to hurt. People already are doing it, but it is going to make it more acceptable, more prevalent, more available, and therefore will have a greater impact. That impact might be, again, I quote Tina Brown, a liberal columnist, or rather editor formerly of Vanity Fair and The New Yorker, who said this famous tweet: legal weed contributes to us being a fatter, dumber, sleepier nation, even less able to compete with the Chinese, end of quote. Having just been to Vietnam and to Korea, looking at their young people there, and one mother said to me in Korea, gee, the only addiction I worry about here is that my young 13-year-old is reading an English version of Harry Potter endlessly. Gee, tough challenge compared to what ours seem to be. The new face of pot is corporate big-time persons, those like who said, I want to make the Walmart of marijuana. The former Microsoft investor who said, I want to make more pot millionaires than we did Microsoft types. Well, I resent that in Nevada. I would rather see people investing in the Teslas, the Faradays, the Switches, the Amazon Comps. That's socially responsible investing, not finding ways to make money off on yet another vice or recreational drug here in Nevada. Next slide. Again, in the past, you remember this, some are physicians here, cigarettes were thought to be healthy and good. We didn't know there was going to be any problems. I would argue the same is going to be true and found out eventually with respect to the levels of THC and things that are in the current marijuana strains. Next. Huh? Well, I had a yeah, real quickly. Okay, I'm about 12 minutes in. We'll go quickly, but I thought you put these together. Well, okay, Joe mentioned about the impact upon workplace issues and work safety issues. I don't know if we're going to get to the slide or not, but these are, can you go back there, Bill, to that one? Industrial accidents, these are the differences between users and non-users. And, you know, let's put it this way. Once it's legalized, folks, it's legal and it's acceptable. Now you say, well, people will be responsible. They know they're not supposed to do it. But we don't have a lot of responsibility operating very well at this time societally. And Colorado and Washington State are experiencing problems in the workplace as a result. There's just some examples. Next one. Absenteeism, injuries. In Colorado, next, let's move further. Well, well, here's a good point with Colorado. I was selected by the Secretary of State along with a woman who is now the Public Information Officer of medical marijuana to write the valid language in opposition. Why, if she's in medical marijuana, is she writing that? Is because she's saying we haven't figured out how to implement, how to regulate, how to make marijuana, medical marijuana, appropriate and truly legal right now. And the Chief Justice of the Nevada Supreme Court, I think, signaled recently he has concerns. He drove around Vegas like many of you have, and about every half mile you see a drreefer.com for a medical marijuana. It's very easy to get it. The old reporter in me has looked into it, and they will guarantee to get you a prescription or your money back. So Colorado took 12 years. Why are we rushing in 2 years to do this in Nevada when we haven't even figured out medical marijuana yet? I think that's a reason to pause. Next. Colorado is regularly diverted to other states. This is an important point because Joe made it strongly. It will eliminate, he said, the black market and drug dealers. But the Denver Post just reported on raids saying, and they arrested 40 people that are selling it right now in Colorado, just recently, 2 days ago, in the Denver, April 14th. Quote, multi-state investigation into illegal distribution of marijuana outside of Colorado. Now, these dealers are getting it from legitimate or legal growing entities and then selling it outside. And they say traffickers hide among the state's sanctioned warehouses and farms. This was the report there. Also, the Colorado Attorney General, Cynthia Kaufman, said recently, criminals still selling on the black market. We have plenty of cartel activity in Colorado and plenty of illegal activity that is not decreased at all. Also, the idea that Joe brought up, that this is going to make the state a lot of money. The governor of Colorado, who was supportive of this, and polls there would indicate it would not pass now after their experiences. And about 2/3 of the state has banned in areas. They just don't want to deal with it. But the governor said recently on a CNN interview, I tell other governors, quoting all the time, that we are not making any extra revenue from pot sales beyond regulating that industry and then money to try and educate kids, again, with the new potencies and the dangers resulted in. And finally, the drug czar in Colorado by the name of Freeman said, you're not going to be able to pay teachers with this money. The big red herring in this whole thing is that the tax revenue will solve a bunch of problems, but it won't. Next. This is another problem in Colorado. Large construction person, maybe like a Norm Deanda, QD here, saying his company has encountered so many job candidates who have failed pre-employment drug tests because of their THC use pot, that it is actively recruiting construction workers from other states. You know, when Tesla came and we did what we did to invite them here, one of the parts of that law is we have to hire 50% of Nevadans. If we legalize and more people are careless and come in to companies that still will drug test, they may not get those jobs, they may lose those jobs. Next one. This was a staffing company, and this, by the way, is reported in a Pulitzer Prize winning newspaper in Colorado Springs. She's saying marijuana has compromised the state's workforce. Colorado, we have an opportunity to look at a laboratory. That's what the Supreme Court said. The states are the laboratories. Let's see how it's going there and make our own decision. She said more than half of the employees who come to her company looking for work failed the required drug test because of their marijuana use. Next. These are some of the challenges in Nevada. We'll not go into that right now, but there are many unanswered questions. And I've had conversations with the Department of Taxation. They are ill-equipped unprepared, have no idea how they're going to implement this thing. But I'll tell you this, they're going to ask you for a lot of money to do it, because the tax revenues are not coming in for a year or two once it gets regulated. They are going to ask the legislature, and I know how it works. They're going to ask for millions and billions of dollars to set up this new governmental infrastructure. These are some of the concerns. Very limited local control. Joe mentioned that there's a lot of areas in town, folks in Montreux and Incline, near Galena, don't want the places, but that's with medical marijuana. With the recreational, the state controls are not nearly as strongly on the side of local communities. Another thing about this is medical marijuana businesses get a first to market advantage, as do, interestingly enough, liquor wholesalers in Nevada. They've inserted themselves into this, and that they will be the middleman, as if liquor hasn't made enough money for their industry. They are the ones who will have a certain advantage written into the law here in Nevada. Okay, next. These, I think, should be coming to the end here, are concerns. It is addictive, perhaps, especially harmful to young people, and an impact upon our education system, both high school and college. Are you comfortable with edibles that dominate the commercial marijuana market? Because this is where it's going. And another problem in schools, and I visit schools, I substitute in schools, that is the new edibles are undetectable. You know, when you and I were kids, the kids were out smoking behind the bleachers, whether it was tobacco or marijuana, you could smell the edibles. You no longer can detect them. Okay, finally. Why are we rushing to legalize this in Nevada? I would say because of corporate greed. There's a lot of money to be made on this. It's not going to find its way back into our education system. We are going to grow and enlarge the size and the scope of the Department of Taxation, our good friends. Also, the political expediency. Again, Democrats have said we wanted to get this ballot measure on the ballot for this election cycle because we believe we'll have not only a greater turnout, but we'll have more assistance to give to the Democrat nominee. That's something they've said publicly. A lot of concerns here, folks. I think we should go slow. We should ask a lot of questions. For those that think medical marijuana has a place that's helped people, I'll accept that. Let's get that part of the industry managed and taken care of well before we go headlong into something that I'd argue is not good for businesses, for families, or for schools in Nevada. Thank you very much.
I didn't mean to cut Pat short, but can you hear me all right? All right. Can you hear me? Okay. I know it ran a little bit longer. If you don't mind saying, I think it's an important issue. Both pro and con, be courteous. We are broadcasting live. Line up here for, and then we'll do the 50-50, maybe somewhere in between. I know there's a lot of questions. So address who you want the question to be answered by, and then we'll go from there. Let's go ahead.
Hello, my name's Kieran Hill, and I would say from both of your introductions, I'm probably more conservative than both of you guys. Just on who you supported and your votes. I would say that prohibition of marijuana is wholly antithetical to limited government republicanism. Government exists to protect life, liberty, and property, not to impose the will of the majority on the minority. If you'll note that the person defending big government failure is Pat Hickey, who voted for the biggest tax raise in Nevada's history. Prohibition of pot costs money to taxpayers, a lot of money. It costs money to imprison people. It costs money to horrendously fail to enforce a law that no free country can enforce. Attempting to enforce this law causes an increase in crime that costs taxpayers lots of money. Again, Pat Hickey talking about ballot measures where he raised the biggest tax raise in Nevada's history after Nevada voters voted it down overwhelmingly, 79%, I think. I spent 6 months in Saudi Arabia where there's the death penalty or 500 lashes for consumption of alcohol. They still consume alcohol. More Johnny Walker is consumed in Saudi Arabia than any other country in the world. Enforcing this is a failure. You can't do it.
It's okay.
I'll let somebody else speak. I'll ask a question later.
Cher Daniels. I have two relatives in California. One is a medical marijuana grower. The other one has gotten out of the business. Here's the problem. My nephew has to go get his mail, take out his trash with a shotgun in case anyone knows what he does for a living on his property. Two, my husband's cousin, who's gotten out of the business, cannot advertise that he wants to sell his equipment. So therefore, my nephew, who could possibly use the equipment, can't buy it because he can't let anybody know what he does for a living. It is not safe for him. His children cannot have playmates come to their house to play because they don't want anybody knowing what he does for a living. This is legalized medical marijuana growing. How is that going to be handled? Both of them.
The first thing that's different from our system in California is we put this in the Constitution in 1998, but then we didn't set up a regulatory structure for 15 years. So for 15 years, we had a black market, and then now we've got a medical marijuana market that's legitimate. The short answer to your question as to how we're going to handle that is by being very, very different from California. Now, California was a world-class screw-up on this, as they are on a lot of things, because they followed the exact prescription to screw it up. They put a very vaguely worded one-paragraph amendment in their constitution, and then the legislature did not allow for any regulation until last year. So they had a longer period of time. There are actually still no state-regulated marijuana businesses in California. So it really has been the Wild West. And I can't tell you how often I say, we're not California. We don't want to be like California. We want to be nothing like California. Actually, the model that I would rather follow is one that follows our gaming regulation model. Because if you think about it, there's not many people here that would say we should get rid of gaming. It's a bad vice. But there are problems with gaming. There are compulsive gamblers, so we have to manage that. Now, we don't want to tell anyone that has $5,000 that they can go down to the county government and get a gaming license and set one up across the street from your house. But we also don't want what they have. We also don't want that, which is what they have in California. Anybody can get into the business. And we also don't want what they have in Ohio, where they were going to write 10 people into the Constitution. Having a middle ground where we regulate this like a privileged license, like a restricted business, that eliminates all those things. Everyone and their cousin knows I'm in the marijuana industry. I don't even live in a gated community. I have a pretty small house. So I don't feel at risk at all. I don't think anyone in our community, in the medical marijuana community here, I mean, Joe Crowley went on the radio and talked about how he's in the industry. So I don't think we'll see that just because we're very, very different from California. And regulating it strongly is something I think is important.
Well, there are problems in the medical marijuana thing that we haven't even begun to work out. And so that's part of the reasoning that I think Nevadans should go slow. And if we are going to allow it, let's make sure that people that have legitimate needs and are not just finding a way around paying taxes, because the dirty little secret here is that medical marijuana consumption goes up among local residents as opposed to recreational. Why? It's the old market, folks. You don't have to pay the 15% tax on it. And when it's really easy to get a medical marijuana card, just try our good friend Dr. Reefer, it's better to get your pot there. And dealers who have been arrested have been purchasing theirs at the medical side, not paying the high tax, distributing it to other states and other places and making money off it. We better go slow with this, in my opinion.
So I just have one other comment, and that is, and this it will be a surprise to a lot of people, I am an ex-heroin addict. I started with marijuana. Took me 30 years to graduate from high school. I did become a successful adult, but there are problems with using marijuana. It is a true fact.
Please be brief in here. Ask a question, not a commentary, so that they can answer. I know we're running a little late, but I think there's good information coming along here. Juanita?
Well, I'm a little disgusted about my whole life in this reefer madness BS, but fear, fear, fear. Isn't it a fact that we had initiative or whatever, petitioned our government and overwhelmingly got the medical marijuana in 15 years ago or more? And yet it took us that long, legislature after legislature after legislature, to finally get that implemented. So if we did some kind of a initiative now, would it take us 15 or 20 years, or could we cut that into maybe 7 years? That's what I'd like to see. And there was another fact about regulating or having testing in these corporations. Well, isn't that their responsibility if they want their employees to be off of any substance? Yes. And another thing, I live in Story County, where legalized prostitution is fine. It is one of our industries. And guess where? Amazon, Google, and Tesla are. Thank you.
I have a question for Mr.
I can answer that. So the legislature took a very long time to do this because all elected officials follow the same rule book. It's 2 steps. The first one is get elected or reelected. The second step is do the right thing. So that's the reason why everyone running for office in this room doesn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole, because you don't lose anything by not changing. You don't lose anything by doing nothing if you're an elected official, which is why we have the legislature that we have now. The safest thing for them to do about marijuana, even though 60% of the people in the state support regulating this, the safest thing for them to do is nothing. Because although 60% of the people support this, this is not the most important issue to people. Jobs, the economy, education, those are the important issues to people and the reasons they vote, which is why you hear all of these candidates talking about jobs, the economy, and education. Because there's not enough people who just vote on marijuana to hold them accountable and make it so that they lose. It's those 2 steps. Get elected or reelected, do the right thing.
I have a question for Mr.
Hold on just a second. In fairness to everybody, I want to do a real quick 50-50, because I know some might have to leave, but I want you to ask your questions. Carolyn's going to pull or do the tickets, and I'll have Pat pull the winning ticket.
Okay, get your tickets out, dig in those pockets in your purse. And one thing I do know, whoever wins, at least I got 1 vote. All right, here goes my 1 vote. It is, I forgot to put my glasses on. Maybe I lost the vote. Stop it, Ray. Okay, 204-5232, and I'm going to have $61 for you. Marion Bond. 5232 are the last four digits. Oh, congratulations. Thank you, Pat.
Now we'll get back to questions. But remember, questions,
I
not
have
statements.
a question for Mr. Hickey. There were a bunch of slides that you had up there. I operate a business in Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and Nevada. And one of your slides showed that somebody came up with this thing that 50% of the people are failing drug tests. In my experience in the state of Utah, where it's not illegal, isn't it true that most of the drug test failures are meth addicts, not marijuana? That's in my, and in my oil business, we had 60% of the people failing drug tests. And that was because in small towns like Wells here, or Elko, or Austin, it's meth, not marijuana. My second question is, well, I got three questions. My second question is, you were talking about the reeferwhatever.com. Isn't it the responsibility of the district attorney to prosecute people who are illegally prescribing these things, just like they did in California? They put a doctor in prison for 30 years. My third question is, I remember you sat right there a year ago or so, and we were all in here in this place. You and Mr. Kerner, who just left, sat up there and told us about the margins tax. Hey, we are not, I'm going to ask a question, okay? Just let me finish my question. How do I know the slides? I already said that one slide I disagree with. How do I know what the slides that you put up there are true now? Just like you promised us, hey, I'm not raising taxes, I'm not doing all this. Those are my three taxes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Your first answer was about those reports from Colorado. Where do we know they're accurate? Well, those were both quotes from newspapers that were quoted. So I assume the reporter got his facts right, that those problems with staffing and hiring that Colorado companies were experiencing was accurately reported. As I mentioned, the newspaper won a Pulitzer Prize. I would hope they were accurate about it. Your second question, isn't the big problem meth? Drugs are a tremendous, horrendous problem for our country, whether it be heroin and prescription drugs, the abuse of alcohol, tobacco. All of these things are huge problems. We're just widening the pathway more by legalizing something that also, according to the UC Davis study, is not necessarily good for people in life. And whether or not you want to believe those things, they're all documented. You can decide to believe what you want to believe, and that's why we're having this debate.
Again, in the brevity of time, please be very specific with your question, who you're directing it to, because it's about a minute or so after 1. Go ahead.
Right. Joe, a question for you. In politics, they often say, follow the money. And with respect to this medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, huge amounts of money were invested in, for example, Colorado. $3.4 million was spent by the pro side, and 90% of that money came from outside of Colorado. You have, in your committee, raised almost $800,000. 60% of that is from out of the state of Nevada. There's money coming from Berkeley. There's money coming from San Francisco. There's money coming from Oakland. There's money coming from Colorado, people that make edibles. There's a guy from New Jersey, a New Jersey giver, who's got IRS problems. What do you know about these people, and what do they want with Nevada?
Okay, the thing I love is when I get a fair, balanced question from someone who's asking it in a reasonable way. So we have raised over $800,000. 60% of it is from outside of the state. That's true. The big surprises, because people, I can't believe it's a big surprise, but our biggest single contributor is a group called the Marijuana Policy Project. They've been working since 1994 to do just this, to end marijuana prohibition. So anyone who says that a Washington-based advocacy group who specializes in ending marijuana prohibition is surprising that they're working to end marijuana prohibition. I think it takes a certain detachment from reality. The other folks that he mentioned are people who are in the marijuana industry in other states. Nevada's law was written very specifically, not just, a lot of states would prohibit people from coming in from other states to come into business. Marijuana is something that is very technical in how to grow it. The security is very particular. And so what we did as a legislature is they required that every single person who comes in as an operator have experience in a legal market. So the law here for medical marijuana required outside expertise because these are the only people who know how to do it. So I'm actually surprised that it wasn't more than 60% that contributed from out of state. And to answer your question as to what do these people want? Well, I'm a Nevadan. I'm volunteering for this. I can tell you what I want. I want to see marijuana prohibition end because the system that exists now puts my children at risk. That's what this group wants. The people that are investing from out of state, they want to come here and do business because they're already here doing business. And I, for one, want people who know what they're doing to do this here.
Hello, I'll make my question brief. I believe first I need Mr. Hickey to answer for something. And Joe, I want to know from you what you will do about it. This is a middle-aged room, and there are a lot of people in this room that could probably benefit from our already medical marijuana. A lot of people do not realize if you get a medical card, you can't have your CCW. You've tied the marijuana to our Second Amendment. So Pat, can you answer for that? And Joe, can you tell me in a recreational setting, you gonna let us keep our guns and our weed, or we gotta give it all up?
Well, the bill in Nevada was copied after Colorado, essentially. So whatever they brought forth here is what's going on in Colorado, and there were progressives primarily behind that politically in Colorado, and I would think maybe there is a nexus to the gun and drug issue for them.
That was actually the cops that did that during the legislature. The police, the trick at the legislature is what you do when you don't want to see something pass is you keep putting poison in it as amendments until the authors of the bill don't even like it anymore. And so this is something Alan Stock asked me on Friday because he said, you know, are you a gun guy? And I said, yeah. Well, I was on the rifle and pistol team in college. I'm a good shot. And he said, what'd you do about your Second Amendment rights? I gave them up. I gave them up to do this. That's how important this is, because what we've said the whole time is very simple. Give us rules and we'll follow them. You can make them ridiculous. The fact that you can be a blatant raging alcoholic and still get a CCW when that's much more likely to be associated with violent behavior. And you can't have, I can't have Second Amendment rights at all. So how I work around it is my wife always had a bigger gun than me anyway, and she's a better shot. So I just borrow her guns when I go shooting, and that's the way I get around it because she's a nurse and she can't have medical marijuana card. And so she's got the guns, I've got the marijuana. That's how it works.
It was not the police that qualified what you're going to vote on in November. It was the paid canvassers, many of the same people that were paid to get signatures. Well, on the medical side. All right. Well.
No, we have several people, but just keep the questions very specific. Senator Gustafson.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, this question is for both of you. And as many of you know, Pat Hickey and I don't agree with a lot of things in the legislature. But this, I totally agree with Senator Hickey on. I believe it's wrong. But I just want to make that statement. And the question is, I just took a tour back in Colorado about 2 months ago, toured the manufacturing, processing plants and everything else, and saw some of the issues and how it is being run. And also we've talked about all the different disadvantages too. But one of the things that they're having problems with back there is the same thing we're going to have problems with here is what do you do with the cash when you sell the marijuana? If the federal law still is in effect saying marijuana is illegal and the banks will not take the money, how are you going to work about that in Nevada?
Well, and until federal law or if or until it changes, it's still just a cash-only business. And for anybody that's in business, owners love cash-only exchanges. The idea being you don't report as much, you don't pay as much in taxes, insurance, and other things. So until that problem is solved, it's ripe for abuse. And there have been many on the medical side. The Las Vegas police just arrested a large organization that was promoting get your pot and pizza for March Madness. And these were obviously sellers, not Mexican cartel local guys that were marketing themselves to medical marijuana card holders, illegal. They were pushers. It doesn't remove that because there's money to be made. And believe me, when the price goes through the roof with the taxation, just like we've done with cigarettes to increase more and more to try to get more money out of it, then the illegal black market activity will only increase in Nevada, I predict.
Okay, so this is the trick that they play where they start a fire in their front yard so you don't notice their house burning down behind them. It's kind of like that thing where they say that we're only in poor neighborhoods, but they don't mention that they will only let us be in poor neighborhoods. So the government loves to talk about how without banking regulations, this is a cash business and it's difficult to control and it's difficult to do the accounting. Tell me about it. Tell me about having to handle all this cash. We would love to have the strictest banking regulations on the planet. We would love it. Please give us the strictest banking regulations on the planet tomorrow. But one thing I refuse to do is sit here and say, okay, let's have this fair argument. You absolutely refuse to let us have any access to banking at all. And then you're going to use that as a reason why we shouldn't regulate the market. And so it seems disingenuous when you say, we're not going to give you the tools to get this done, and then we're going to use that as a reason that you shouldn't do this at all. I mean, it plays into their strategy because we've been winning a lot nationwide. These guys don't have much left, and so they're reaching for straws. This is one of those straws.
Thank you. My name's Dante Canuck. I'm a student. Oh, sorry. Let me move that up. Sorry there. This question is directed to both of you, and it's along the same lines of federal questions, because ironic as this is, this ballot measure is on, is basically contesting itself with the general election for the presidency. And regardless of, if this passes or not, I see the natural possibility of if you have a Republican president and a Republican House, likely this probably won't be able to be enforced. And this direct question is directed to both of you guys. If that possibility does occur, what happens? Realistically, Republican president's going to logically put a Republican U.S. attorney, which will logically not enforce the law. Will logically enforce the law, enforce federal law. Therefore, this won't go into effect.
It's part of the real uncertainty. I mean, possible scenario if Donald Trump were elected from our side, if he appointed a Chris Christie, who has a history, having been a federal prosecutor, being very strong against this, he may not turn a blind eye, such as President Obama's Justice Department has done under Eric Holder, that has basically not enforced the federal law. So it's entirely possible, if a Republican is elected, that there would be severe problems for Nevada and other states that have legalized in contrast or in opposition to federal law.
We'll take that risk. We're okay with that. I mean, it'd be unfortunate if a Republican president came in or a Democratic president came in. Hillary's not great on marijuana, but the thing is, it doesn't affect, if we were to pass this and get this up and running, and then all of a sudden they sent, National Guard troops in to shut all the places down, that would be terrible. But I think that every day that goes by, that becomes a less and less possibility. I think that the Justice Department's issued these 2 Cole memos, Cole 1 and 2, that actually give us some guidelines on to how the federal government would like to see this administered. So I think it's highly unlikely, which is why people are willing to invest in the industry. It could happen. All of this could happen. The biggest reason that I have people go running from the industry is because it's federally illegal. So that is a possibility. I just think it becomes slimmer every week.
And by the way, in closing, thank you, Pat, thank you for your service. I just wanted to say that above all. I wanted to at least say a kind word in this room. So just coming from me, thank you.
I'm Tom Heck. My question is, y'all have pretty good arguments. So why would these arguments not apply for coke and heroin?
I don't know enough about those substances. I've seen some countries that have regulated a lot of different drugs. This was the one that affected me most personally. And this was the one that when I was a bartender back in college, I saw that a lot of people got into bar fights because of alcohol, but people got into trouble because of marijuana. So marijuana is the only drug that I've seen that has 0 people overdose every year. 0 people die from taking too much of this, and it's markedly less harmful than alcohol, but we don't regulate it like alcohol. So that's been the disconnect for me, was the alcohol-marijuana comparison. And with marijuana being safer than alcohol, it just seems to make sense to regulate it like alcohol.
Answering that question, why not then legalize other harder drugs? Well, an editorial writer from the Huffington Post suggested just that, saying that this is really the first step towards legalization. And the founder of the pro-marijuana movement, Normal, back in the day, said medical marijuana is nothing but a Trojan horse for recreational. His words, not mine.
Okay, so in the legislature, Sherry Powell, Ladies of Liberty, changed my hat again. So in the legislature, this last legislative session, you passed the Naloxone Narcan bill. The inventors of Charlotte's Web, which is a marijuana product, was invented by 5 Navy SEALs, which even North Virginia, who has the most stringent drug laws, has passed possession. I'm getting there. So for me, I find it odd that you would pass a Narcan bill, and then Navy SEALs, who I would hope would be able to carry their firearms, who are the inventors of a marijuana product, why would that be a detriment to our community? And the reason that I ask is because transportation by parents to the children with seizures, which is what that was created for, will be facing federal charges, criminal charges across the United States when this has been proven effective for their kids. That's the question. Why would they not go along with these guys who created it?
It was a different issue.
Oh, I think that was for you. I don't know why the legislature does what they do.
Very short question. I don't smoke marijuana because I don't want to. This question's for Pat Hickey. He knows that if I did want to smoke marijuana, all the SWAT teams that in the world can't stop me, right?
The district attorney, Chris Hicks, from our local area, and I've discussed this with him, says that we have now de facto decriminalization. People are not arrested for personal use. And if they are arrested for something, they're sent to drug courts with the more, hoping to educate young people. I mean, my good friend Joe here stated on KOH radio where last time, he's been smoking for 15 years. To me, I said, you make the point. No one's coming to arrest you. My problem, and I don't want to lock people up, I'm for decriminalization and for education and to help young people that have problems or old people that have problems. My problem with this is an industry trying to make money in a way that's not going to benefit the education system and the workforce development that we're trying to build.
Is it your job to judge people trying to make money that don't harm other people?
It's in a democracy, it's our job to point out our viewpoints.
This is a republic.
You're asking government to be a part of this business because they're the ones that are going to have to enforce all of these things to the benefit of corporations and not individual Nevadans or entrepreneurs. They're excluded from this. Do you know in this bill that you cannot grow any 25 miles from a legal marijuana dispensary in Las Vegas? That means you can't grow it anywhere. So you think this is just a libertarian free thing. We're all going to be able to become entrepreneurs. Forget about it. The alcohol people and his big corporate donors have got it all locked up.
Okay, if I could respond to that, two things. The alcohol people. This is the sponsor of AB4 last year, which allows you to start a micro winery anywhere in the state with no limits. You can produce as much of the substance that is more dangerous to you than marijuana because of Pat. So it's something. Yeah, alcohol is more dangerous than marijuana. No question. Absolutely no question.
Let's hear this. My brother-in-law was a marijuana addict. He spent 2 years in prison. I try to help him. He lives in my house. Okay, I tell him to quit smoking pot in my house, so he chokes me. Okay, so my neck is still messed up from that. So when you say weed is not detrimental to somebody, you're wrong. People are violent. I have 2 screws and titanium in my left eye from a pot hit. So you can cram that up where you want to go it. I am a Republican and I'm proud of it. I will never vote for marijuana to be illegalized in Nevada. It's another problem. It's a social problem. I don't care what you say because you're wrong.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Why would you want to legalize marijuana?
Well, if someone
because you're not really telling the truth.
Okay, well, do you want me to answer the question? Okay, so if someone attacked you on marijuana, I would suggest that they've got much bigger problems than marijuana, because every study that's looked at alcohol and marijuana, alcohol is far, far more likely to cause violent behavior than marijuana. So I think there's an issue there with causality. The other issue is what we're really talking about is regulation here. So let's say that someone has an issue with marijuana. Let's say that 3%, 5%, whatever the percentage is that has an issue with marijuana. Who's better equipped to help them? What system is better equipped to help them? The system we have now is where if you get caught with marijuana and you're not an addict and you haven't had a violent issue and you haven't had a problem with anyone, you just get caught with it, you go to court, like Pat said, drug court, and you get 2 choices. Say you're an addict or say you're a criminal, when in truth, you're neither. I think that when you have a regulated environment where you have a lot of doctors involved, like with the medical marijuana industry, the people that are going to be getting into this first, you can proactively police your own industry a lot better than the cartels and a lot better than prohibition. I just think this is a better way, and it's failed so miserably and it's been so expensive. I just think it's time for a new approach.
Yeah, I represent all you guys. I'm a at-large Washoe County Planning Commissioner, but this came before us to craft a local ordinance to, for the facilities and for where they can be put and all that stuff. And our local planners, the full-time staff, they said, we still have federal laws against all this. Now, this initiative might change that, but we, at the county planning level, we don't want to touch this. And if they're going to resolve a bunch of this and get some kind of laws and rules we can pass, maybe we can go on. But right now, it's not happening in Washoe County.
Thank you. I wanted to thank everybody for coming, but I will make a personal comment, not as president of the club. I grew up in Humboldt County, which is part of the Golden Triangle, okay? But there wasn't a pot industry. Now there is. My cousin's assistant prosecuting attorney, and they ignore, you can have 99 plants, which I should have with the house there. I could have made money. But I personally think that marijuana is a gateway drug, and it will lead to other things. Even medical marijuana, you can stub your toenail and go to a doctor in California, and they'll give you a medical marijuana card. And I know you can. Anyway, that's my comment. I want to thank all of you. Don't forget, the 17th of May is going to be on immigration. It's going to be very lively. I want to thank our 2 speakers. They've been very kind to take this. Oh yeah, and flyers for all this are back on the tables. Pick up your flyers.
Can I take a train business car with you?
Let me get
Joe. Joe, I'm not ignoring you, but I got to.
Oh, no, I got it.
Very good, because yeah. Okay. I thought you made them.
Just call me up, okay? Oh, you have my Take care, bye.
I'll feel it. Thank you.
It's not my pleasure. I want to add to that question because that will pass by and validate social identity.
No.
And that's a fact.
No.
And it
This
made
is
it
a rocket.
okay for all of us to
It doesn't look like a bullshit, so it's okay. If I get half of the budget that he's getting from Joe Brezny, something to figure that. It's just I may not get half the budget. Right now they're outspending this 10 to 1. So I can't win. AFP doesn't know.
Commissioner? Yeah, I thought so. I'm so busy trying to make it survive. I had the Air Force Academy contact me the other day about it. Let's finish this. We'll talk in a bit. I was in civil military operations in the military at the end. You know, that's.
So what?
Just what were you going to talk about again? What you mentioned earlier.
Just about the county party problem.
Yeah. Go ahead and mention the county party.
Well, you don't do it.
Hey, we have Roger Edwards on, and I started the recording right after he spoke. He's going to talk about the county party issues for a few minutes. So go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, well, we've been in the news a lot lately about all the problems we've been having at the county party, and it's almost 100% due to not following our own bylaws and the NRSs and all the rules and regulations that we have known about forever. And this is nonsense. And we can't make the operations of the county party anything about a single person or a single issue or anything. That's not our job. It's not how we ever got this far off track, but we are. So I'm running to square that away and fix what's wrong with the party.
Thank you, Roger, and it's good meeting you. Take care. And that'll finish today's 2-hour fest. We'll try to break this down into smaller elements.